All right, game on. Okay, welcome back to the channel. Like I've said many times, I'm not into doing podcasts, and that's nowhere near it. But with today's technology, this makes the best way to do it. And I've got a really good friend of mine out on the West Coast. We haven't caught up, and I thought, what a better way to do it than to do it on a Zoom meeting, because he's got a lot going on. I called him last night. He was headed back from fishing, and then you'd worked at a bass club and done some speaking, and you pop up on my social media 24/7. Ken Ma from the West Coast. Everybody thinks that I'm in Oklahoma and don't have any West Coast guys. Dude. What's up? What's up?
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to Kyle Greenlaw the other day from Tackle.
Yeah, I actually ran into him at ICAST.
Yeah, he texted me and he said he ran into you and he ran into McClellan. And I think back. So how long ago was that now? 4 years ago?
God, has it been that long? 3?
I want to say it was 4 years ago when Nick won the Open. And I think I always say this. One thing that fishing and hunting for sure fishing for me that has done is it brings some of the most tremendous people into your life that you would have never ever met.
Yeah.
And I think back, it was me, and I'm gonna leave some people out. It was me, you, McClellan, Lintner, Salvucci. I think Lane Olson was there. Other people that don't know, Dusty, and it was just a tremendous group of people.
Yeah.
And that one event, brings somebody like me and you together.
Yeah.
And we'll have those memories and we'll be connected forever because of fishing.
Yeah. That was the US Open that you're talking about. And we all stayed in a house together in Las Vegas. And it was probably one of the best trips that I've had fishing. It was great.
Yeah.
I was super impressed with the fact that you got up, like you did extra work every day for everybody. Like you were the one that would make all the sandwiches. Like you would take people's orders of what they wanted on their sandwiches and then make them this big sub every day for practice. And dude, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, it's what we do. Everybody does their part, and it's just, and it's funny. It's those things you remember, right? It's not so much the fishing that you remember, but it's the camaraderie and all those things that you remember.
I do recall that in that house because I stay in houses all the time, and I'm not knocking anybody that I room with. I'm not saying this, but that was a big house, and I generally end up doing quite a bit of cooking. I enjoy cooking. It's kind of part of what I do in the evenings. And man, there was no lack of help in that house. Like everybody did something, somebody cleaned the kitchen afterwards, somebody take the trash out, there was always somebody bumping around helping cut vegetables up, whatever it was, because that's a big group of people to be taken care of, and just like you making sandwiches, that's a big part of staying together. You know what I mean?
It really is. And that's what I love about like staying with Nick and Dusty and Lintner, and you might fit right in too for that trip. I'm real picky about who I want to stay with. Nick says it all the time, and he doesn't say it in an arrogant way. He says, hey, I got enough money. I'd rather be comfortable.
Yeah.
So it's not so much trying to bring a bunch of people in to save money. At least for this group, you want to be around the right people. You want to be around the right-minded people.
Yeah.
Because, you want to be able to, like you came back to practice and be like, Ken, hey, I know you're not going to do this, but, I'm catching them on A, B, and C, and, before the tournament started, I was catching them on B, C, and D, and you're like, hey, man, let me get one of those. And it's really free like that.
Yeah, like some of that was stuff that I'd never seen, like that desert rig that you were throwing. I mean, that's not something that we're familiar with at all out here in the Midwest or in the South. And that was a really cool deal. And I didn't even own one, so you gave me a couple of them just to go throw. But I joke all the time about the houses, like when we get new people in the house, I can tell. So like I'm older, I'm 47, so I've traveled around with different people, but I laugh. I'm like, I can tell which men don't do anything at home and their wives literally do everything for them, because you'll cook, nobody jumps up to clean, nobody helps. It's like, dude, I ain't your wife. You know what I mean?
Well, I would tell anybody that's thinking about traveling together, finding a team. Well, I mean, we're not talking about team fishing, but I always tell people finding a team partner to fish a tournament with is probably harder than finding a wife.
Yeah, it is.
But and this is, so we kind of have this rule in the house, like if you cook that night, you're not cleaning.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just kind of a standing deal there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I would tell the young people, when you're traveling and you're learning, fishing is one part of our sport, and I always tell people this, and I always get on this tangent. Fishing is one part. It's what brings us together. But the other parts is the business side, right? And you and I talked about that briefly yesterday. So if you're an aspiring pro angler, you have to also do the business side, and then you have to learn how to travel, who to travel with. You have to learn how to take care of business off the water so that you can focus on the water.
Yeah.
And I'm not, just like you said, at our age, fish until 9 o'clock at night and, eating Carl's Jr. or McDonald's or Hardee's or something like that. That doesn't work for me the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if I got to give up, 2 hours of fishing time, it doesn't mean that you're giving up or that somebody else is outworking you. Right. Because work gets done off of your boat as much as, and something that you and Lintner has taught me is, you get in these tournaments and you got to sometimes get off the water to tighten your bolts, tighten your jack plate, lube your trolling motor. So that way the next day, if you're fishing in 2 feet of water, your trolling motor's creaking all over the place and it's scaring the fish, right?
Right.
So there's just so much more to being a touring angler or any angler than just putting your boat in the water and fishing for 12 or 14 hours a day.
The mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah,
at some point we can all cast, flip, skip, do all the trickster stuff, put baits into certain places. But dude, you'd be amazed how many guys don't realize that their trolling motors are creaking. I've been in areas like in Florida and stuff on those grass flats where there's a whole bunch of us together. And I'm like, dude, does that guy not realize how loud that trolling motor is every time he steps on it? I could hear it from my boat. You're exactly right.
Yeah. And it's just, all it takes is you walk around your boat with a little silicone, a little can of silicone. And, like I'll do it, like that day, if we needed it, like we were at the US Open and I got it out, I'll walk around everybody's boat and do it. Right. I mean, I already got it in my hand. Right.
Yeah.
I'll walk by. Hey, Bradley, you want me to hit your trolling motor? And you'd be like, well, yeah, go ahead, hit it up.
Well, I asked you last night and I wasn't aware of this. I didn't know, and I probably should have. But I was asking you if you were still chasing bad guys. So like a lot of people that watch my channel are probably not as familiar with you because you are a true West Coast guy right now. Like you don't come out east and play. Tell me what you were telling me last night about what all you got going on and what you had done. So tell them what you had done too.
So briefly, I mean, I worked for the Department of Corrections in California, and I worked under a kind of a specialized umbrella where for the last 13 years, I was on a U.S. Marshals task force where we would basically, just like you see Bad Boys you see on TV, we go around and we would find, apprehend, track, and investigate high-profile wanted suspects. And most of the time, if my team was looking for you, you're wanted for either you're a sex offender or you were wanted for some high crime. And what I mean by high crime is like there's some type of like assault with deadly weapon, armed robbery, murder, attempt murder, things like that. So they were really high crimes. So I did that for basically for forever. And then recently I was, like I told you, I retired on May 6th. And and it's been great. I mean, I've been fishing, I think I told you, like, hey man, what the heck are you doing? And I said, well, like, let me give you a snapshot. In the last 25 days, I have fished 17 of them. And then 4 of the additional days I went to Las Vegas with the wife.
I saw some of that.
Yeah.
concert and Louis Vuitton bags and everything.
Yeah. Mama likes that stuff. I like it too. And anytime I always pay it forward. I always say, when I win on the water, she wins at home. So so I do that quite a bit.
That's awesome, dude. So now you're retired. Is your plan just to go full forward in fishing?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm doing that now. Wild West Bass Trail raised the Apex Tour 2 years ago. So I'm fishing that. I'm fishing Wild West Pro-Ams. I still am fishing the US Open. And, I don't know if you've met him yet, but, MLF hired a new tournament director, Alan Gray.
Yeah, I have not met him.
To do Toyotas. You should have him on. He's really energetic, looks like he is going to be given an opportunity to kind of push and change things. I've talked to him, and the West is a different market, and I always want to tell people and explain to people that out West, if we have a pro-am that gets in excess of 100 boats, that's a win for us,
right?
And then the team tournaments, most of the regionalized team tournaments, they'll draw anywhere from 50 to 90 boats. And then Wild West teams will draw more like, the Texas Team Trail or Alabama Team Trail, things like that, where, there'll be times where Wild West will draw. Typically, they draw in the 140s to 150s, and high water mark, they'll have 250.
Wow.
They've had 260-ish, which is big, right, for us.
Yeah.
So that kind of sets up, what the viewers see. You're not used to, going to like Guntersville or Chick, where, on a weekday, Lintner tells me, like at Chick on a weekday, there'll be 250 boats in the parking lot, and that's only, one of the ramps.
Right.
There'll be that many people fishing during the week there.
Yep.
So, it's a different culture. It's not, I've said this on BTL, it's, bass fishing out here is not a way of life like it is where you're from. It's a way of life. You go to a tournament and, your whole family might show up there, especially if your family was younger, right? Our kids get older and they just, they get wheels and they just forget about you.
Correct.
Thanks for the car, Dad.
Yes, exactly. I've got one of those. She's out of the house this morning. She actually woke my wife and I up this morning, headed off to the horse barn and to see a friend to help with some training stuff and ride. And I was like, she's 17. And I was thinking the same thing. I mean, this is 6 a.m. and she's got mama wound up on the wrong side of the bed first thing this morning. She's still in there going right now. The wife is. I was like, man, that really got you going this morning. And she's like, well, she's supposed to be doing this, this, and this, and not,
not that, and that.
Yeah.
No, that's true. I just, that happens. So, and I think, once I tell my wife, just somewhere between 15 and 25, our kids kind of grow apart from us. And then when life slaps them in the face, they grow back to us.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I wanted to catch up with you. Like I wanted to do this recording like this, because this, honestly, guys, Ken and I've been friends since we really kind of met at the US Open 3 or 4 years ago. And we don't get an opportunity to talk and visit. And I just kind of wanted to do it on this Zoom meeting. You've had a lot of success, dude, in the last 2 years. Like, you got some big trophies. What'd you get? 3 last year and 21, and you've already won one this year as well. Another Apex. Yeah. Do the Apex tours, are they televised as well? How do they cover that coverage?
So they do produce a television show. Typically, it comes out. Usually, the way it works is like, we'll film this year, and then it'll air like in the 3rd or 4th quarter. So there is a delay of when they air. But yeah, they are televised. They go to Pursuit, and then after they're on Pursuit, they go to Outdoor Action TV.
Are they televised nationwide or just regionally out on the West Coast?
No, it goes across the nation. It's funny because the show does have some strong viewership, like in the North.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is televised. People can find it. And like I said, and then it lives forever on Outdoor Action TV. So people can stream it there for free. They just have to look up the Apex Pro Tour. And it's really, it's the first tour that we've had where you have to qualify to get there. You can't just pay your money and then enter the event and jackpot the event. It's more like what you're trying to do. It's to qualify for the Elite Series, and once the anglers qualify and get in, they're locked in for the season, which I like better, right? Because then you have less. If they end up going somewhere local, you don't have a whole bunch of locals trying to jackpot and take up half the checks.
Yeah.
In your events, right? You're fishing against the same, for you're fishing against the same 90 anglers. And, right now Apex this year started at 46. The goal is to grow it to 50. So at some point, so it's the second year. Next year it might get there. They're being pretty cautious, I think, moving forward with just where the economy's going. And I don't want to get sidetracked on that, but the fuel prices, the economy, and then the interest rates and all that kind of stuff. And anytime this happens, all segments are hit, but we know like blue collar segments are hit really hard. And, we have, fishing and hunting go hand in hand with blue collar workers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No matter how we try to phrase this, sometimes I have people ask me like, why haven't we gotten this, or why haven't we gotten that in the sport? And I'm like, dude, or why does this happen in the sport? And I'm like, you got to realize that, sometimes we lose track that we still a bunch of hillbillies. I mean, there's a bunch of hillbillies in this sport.
Yeah. And even out here, I mean, that's how it is for us,
Yeah.
I mean, the ones that are connected to it and that stay in the sport, fishing, hunting go hand in hand. And, when you own a gun, you own a boat, you own a truck too, right?
Yep.
I mean, that goes hand in hand. And so it is not so much more city like here, because it's city like there too. But once you get entrenched in the outdoors, like you said, we're just a bunch of hillbillies, outdoor people, and we just want to go fish.
We are.
Yeah.
I know when I was staying with you guys, when I was out at the US Open, I know I told you this story, and I told this story, I think, on BTL or somewhere, but I was way up one of those arms, out of cell service, and was fishing around. It's actually a public campground. And I had a guy pull a shotgun on me and wanted me to leave, and all I was doing was just fishing around the point that he had his camper marked on. But I think you and I talked about it that night, and you were like, "What'd you do?" And I was like, "I just said, yes, sir." And I fired up my big motor and I ran about 150 yards to get out of shotgun range and went in the next pocket. And, I thought about picking up the phone and calling somebody, but there was no cell service for one. And like, what were they going to do? Come out there 3 hours later? And so the hillbilly in me I think he was up to no good probably, but
right.
I kind of understood the fact that even though he's in a public campground, that he kind of felt like he should be, especially if he's somewhere from the city around there, he really would feel entitled to, I'm out here by myself, leave me the hell alone, get away from me. And I kind of get that. So anyway, I just went on fishing about my day and didn't think anything about it other than I never had a gun pulled on me. But yeah, that was an interesting deal. But that's the hillbilly in us, right? Like, you're able to overlook some of that stuff and kind of move on and continue to fish throughout the day. And that was in practice anyway. But yeah,
you don't want to put yourself in any unnecessary situations.
Well, you're out of shotgun range. You don't have to get very far. So anyway, Diesel, you're a Dodge guy, right?
Yeah.
Is that correct? Do you run a Dodge Diesel or do you run a Dodge gas truck?
No, I actually, they just gave me a 2022 Eco Diesel.
Okay. So here's my question. I just wondering for general speaking, how much is a gallon of diesel right now in California?
Actually, okay. So when I say it's come down, it should never be this high to begin with. All right. So I'm not saying I'm okay with it. But for right now it's about 619 on average, to answer your question. But maybe about 2 weeks ago, I mean, it was like 749.
Wow.
So, but again, I don't want to get sidetracked and all that, but they, you know, I
I
mean,
think in 2008 or 9 we came out there for the Elite Series on the Delta in Clear Lake, and
yeah,
that was after '08. So when all that stuff went high, and I think diesel prices were that high back then. Do you remember them
seven.
being that high? Yeah.
No, this is the highest I've ever seen fuel
Okay.
in my life.
Okay.
You know, so I think prior to that, I remember like unleaded being like 450, 480 before, and then diesel might have been around like 580
Yeah.
ish.
Yeah.
But I've not ever seen it be $7.
My recollection is probably not correct, because I brought that up to a couple people and they're like, man, I don't think it was that high, but it may have just seemed to me at the time that it was just astronomical. But yeah. Yeah. So the diesels, I get it, man. I run one too. I just ran one to New York, and their gas prices are pretty on par with California, I'm sure, up in
Right,
New York. But
right.
dude, one of the things that, I really was impressed with you and still am to this day is your marketing ability. Like, you put a lot into it. I mean, a lot, and you do a very good job with it. You
Thank you.
represent lots of different companies, and you're kind of like me. You consider it more like a partnership. Guys always talk about sponsorship. I've always hated the word sponsorship, honestly, because it doesn't really make sense. Really, you're kind of working together as partners, trying to help them. You know what I mean? To grow, and you do a really good job with it.
Yeah. Thank you, by the way. And I take it seriously. You know, I did a podcast on Sirius, and I talked about, you know, there's so many anglers that you know, they don't approach it quote as a job. You know, like what you're doing. You know, like I didn't, and I don't do it for a living.
Right.
You know, where some of you, this is how, you know, like I use Lintner as an example. You know, he's one of my best friends. This is how he feeds his family, right? This is how he pays his truck payment. This is how he pays his house payment. This is how he puts his kids through school, right? Fishing. You know, so there's a small group of anglers on, well, anywhere in the nation, but on both those tours, right? And when I talk both those tours, I'm talking about Bass Pro Tour and I'm talking about the Elite Series,
Right.
right? You know, if you think about it, there's only 170 of those anglers, right? Because there's like what 90 something on the Elite Series, and there's 80 over there, right?
Correct. Right.
Yeah, so there's like 170 anglers, it's changing, but I look at that, and you know, and I can go down the list from the outside looking in, and you know, out of those 170 anglers, you know, I would say there's probably 30 or 40% of them that are truly doing it for a living, right? Meaning, and then the other percentage, you know, they have some other business, you know, they have some other job, they have some other situation that allows them, you know, to chase this tour.
Yeah.
You know, and so few anglers really pursue it and at least treat it like a business. You know, and I've always done that. Even, you know, when I started, you know, I got product and discount off of product. You know, and I still treated their investment in me as that, like, okay, how do I return this investment?
Correct.
You know, and that's how I look at it. And now when I have companies that are you know, that write us 5-figure checks, you know, I always say this, like if I sponsored you, Bradley, and or if I endorsed you or partnered with you, and I write you a $25,000 check, right? I'm going to ask questions at the end of the quarter.
And you
better
should
believe I'm going to ask questions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And my attitude about that is, I want to do enough work that exceeds their expectations, and then I want to document that work and send that documentation in a quarterly.
Right.
Right. To where when I send that to that decision maker, they have no questions, no qualms about why we're paying Bradley or why we're paying Ken.
I agree.
Right.
I agree.
And that's just how I look at it. Right. I like, you know, I like being able to fish for free.
Do you put your own quarterlies together, or do you pay someone else to do them?
No, I do that work myself. So
That doesn't
what I
surprise
do,
me.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of us through the years, we've paid other companies, right? Third party companies that keep
yeah,
track.
like a Cox report, right?
Right. Like the Cox
Right.
report. Dude, you don't know. So, like, once guys started really doing that, some of the people in marketing, right? Now, some of these were corporate companies. So, and I'm not going to name any names,
Right.
but I've had multiple people tell me, don't send me that stupid report. Like, I get so many of those, like people that are managing big pro staff teams, they're not even looking at them. And I'm like, I was shocked because I was like, do you realize how much money all the anglers are paying for that? And they're like, yeah, but it's just a bunch of fluff. I would rather just have, you know, a cut and dry, one sheet of paper, you know,
Yeah.
where
Kind
you've
of a
been, what
quick
you've
and
been
dirt.
doing quick. Yeah. They would prefer that over a big, you know, so that's why I say it doesn't surprise me that you do that.
Yeah. And I think that, media has changed that, right? So,
Yeah, definitely. Because now it's so easy for you yourself to get your numbers and Wise headed off to the office. Easier for us to get our numbers from social. That's the road you're headed down, right?
yeah. And well, really what else, I saw McClellan showed me his Cox report from, well, I don't know, this is probably 8, 9 years ago, and it was the size, for the young people, they're not going to remember, but it was the size of the white pages section of the phone book back in the day, right? I mean, it was probably an inch and a half thick.
That's right.
And and the price that you all paid to get that done, I mean, it was impressive.
Yes,
but you really had to dig into it, right? Because you're talking, it was like a 180-page report. Nowadays media has changed that, where even the decision makers, they're not looking through 180 pages.
That's right.
Right. So I agree with you. Is you have to put you got to get right to the point. A lot of pictures, right? It's almost like Instagram for them. A lot of pictures, so they see you interacting with the public, kids, and then if you're on tour, you win something big, that's also important to the companies still. But yeah, you have to capture that stuff. And I tell people all the time, we hold this world in our hand, this phone.
That's right.
And a lot of people and a lot of anglers, they think that, okay, hey, I'm at this function, I'm going to post this, and I let it fly out to social media, that they've done their job. And what they don't realize is that the decision maker who decides whether Bradley and Ken get paid or not is not the same person that handles social media. So sometimes that there's a disconnect there.
Yep.
Because you feel like, okay, well, I made, X, 10 posts for Falcon rods this year, or for Loomis rods this year, so they're going to be happy about that, right? And the decision maker didn't see a single one of your posts, right? For the same example you said, because they either can't, they're flooded with it, or they don't care enough about it.
You're absolutely right. I've actually noticed over the last few years, since I started doing a lot of YouTube, that I've got some sponsors that aren't aware at all of what goes on with YouTube without having those reports, like what you're talking about.
100%.
And then I have some who are heavily invested in the industry. Now, these are people that are really good at their job too in marketing. And I notice this, but they know everything. They watch everything. They're involved with everything.
Every comment.
It is amazing how much I have learned to appreciate that, because I know how hard I work at it all. Right. And so whenever I'm standing at ICAST and one of them says, hey man, I watched this video and this video, and it starts a conversation about something they were interested in, and that's cool and everything. But what I have noticed that I have really come to appreciate is the fact that they're that invested in me. Does that make sense? Like, they're actually in enough that they care about what I'm putting out there for them to help represent them. Does that make sense?
It 100% does, and I actually did 2 follow-ups to that, remind me if I forget about the Sunline example. But I had a friend that, got on with the local dealership, and the general manager, was looking at his social media and looking at his boat, and says, well, dude, you're not tagging this in these posts. And he actually got upset, right? Because for what they were giving him and what they were asking him, it didn't quite match up.
Right.
Right. They were probably, the dealership was probably getting the better end of the deal. So he felt a little like, well, dude, they're only giving me this and they're saying this. And this is what I said to him. I said, you should be glad that he cares enough to say something.
Yeah.
Right. Because
Right.
and you and I've seen this, I've had partners where, you think you're doing a great job.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They don't say anything. And then at the end of the year, you're going to re-up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they're going a different direction. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
dude, what
Mm-hmm.
what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And all of a sudden, and they never tell you everything. They just say, hey, our budget got cut or this or this. But
Right.
then they leave you and then they sign with somebody else.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And I would rather have a company tell me, and that's what brings me to the Sunline thing coming in. And I'll give a really good example. I would rather a company tell me that, hey, you're not doing what we expect. Right. Because then I can change. Yes. I can adapt. If the compensation is worth it, then I can adapt to that while it's happening.
I totally agree, dude. 100%. 100%
Yeah.
agree. But, a lot of the companies and people involved, they're just like us. They have other things going on. They may think about it, then forget to mention it, forget to drop an email. And that's why I think it's important that you're doing the things that you're talking about, quarterly reports and things like that, staying in touch. A phone call here or there or text message is a good idea. Relationships are a big part of it, right? I mean, I'm sure a lot of your stuff's that way. I know a lot of mine is, especially as long as I've been doing this. Relationships are big for me. They help, and it's not relationships that are a year old. They're relationships that are years and years old, and then they help me stay in touch and keep in contact.
Well, and I think also what gets lost is, when you're talking about relationship, people will leave deals. You and I will leave deals.
Mm-hmm.
What we won't leave is quality relationships.
100%.
Right. You're not leaving that. Right. Even, if a new line company comes to you or us and me and says, hey, we want you to run this fishing line. We're going to pay you 3 times, what you're currently, because you trust the product and you have built a great relationship with people, the answer, you can tell them like, no, I'm not interested.
Yeah. This hat on my head is a perfect example of what you're talking about. So for the last 4 or 5 years, I have not had a reel sponsor. The problem with reels is that most reel manufacturers make rods. And for me to have a real deal with someone and have a relationship with reels, it generally conflicts with this. And that's where the conversation starts. Because I've, just talking lightly with some people that I know, they're like, yeah, man, that'd be great. What about your rods? And I'm like, well, I've got a really good relationship with the Beckwiths who own Falcon. They're in Oklahoma, an Oklahoma company. I've been friends with them for a long time. I enjoy their friendship and our relationship. And just like you say, I'm not willing. Not only that, it's a product that, I've grown up using in
love
Oklahoma.
And trust.
Correct. So with the combination of those two things, I'll buy some reels, right? It's not that big a deal.
Right. You get the money basically to buy the reels from a different relationship. Right. And it's all part of your portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to briefly touch on Sunline. 5 or 6 years ago, I was going through a little rough patch with Sunline, and Mike actually, he and I talked. Fauster, right? You know who he is.
Yep.
And I'm not fishing on any of the big tours, but I'm valuable enough here that we pick the phone up and talk to each other. And dude, I learned so much about what I was doing wrong, and it has really helped me, like you and others have made the comment, like, dude, I watch you on social media and do this. And from a marketing standpoint, it just feels really natural, and I'm doing a great job.
You are.
And I thank you for that. And I learned a lot from having that conversation with Mike.
Well, he's actually one of the people I'm talking about who's very invested and very good at his job. He's extremely good. He's extremely intelligent. But that guy is on top of it, dude. On top of it.
He sees everything.
Yeah.
Like you can make a comment on a post, and that's what a lot of people don't understand is social media is not just what you post in the world. It's your calling card of how you interact and engage with other companies or other people or other things. But yeah, and I'll be real quick, but like Mike and I had a conversation, and I'll never forget this. He said to me, he says, "Okay, Ken," he goes, "How many spools of Sunline have you sold this year?" And he waited and waited and waited. It was an awkward silence, right? And I'm sitting here thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. And then finally he let me off the hook and he goes, "You can't tell me." Right?
Right.
He says, you can't tell me exactly how many, right? You can guess, could be 100 spools, could be 1,000 spools. He goes, "You don't know."
Right.
And he was right. And then he explained to me how my social media was lacking in supporting that partnership, right? Because like he said, he goes, somebody had just, I've slipped the name, but you'll remember, but somebody had just won the Forest Wood Cup when we talked about it, and they won it on that chrome pencil popper.
Right.
Yep. Okay. Yep. And I forget who it was, but they won it on the pencil popper, and you could not find a chrome pencil popper in stock anywhere. And he used that as an example. He goes, everybody sees the bait, but they don't see the line that's connecting the bait. Okay. So he says, so as a partner, if you don't talk about, if you don't explain, you don't tag, you don't show, we lose that opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
And he's 100% right.
Line is actually, and Valster and I've had this conversation, it's a difficult thing to market, right? Because you just see a rod and a reel with line on it. No lines look different, right? Like, so obviously some of the braids and stuff stand out bright in color, right? But for the most part, it's a line on a reel. So if we're not talking about what we do have spooled up, right? Sunline to me is an easy market because it's a product that I've believed in for a long, long time.
100%.
I remember back in the day when I was on the Elite Series and I wasn't sponsored by them. And I had some problems with some line that I was using at the time with another company that I was involved with. And I was going to Takahiro, Tommy Biffle, Aaron Martins. They were all Sunline guys. And Takahiro was the first one. I was in a campground one night and he was like, "Here, take a spool of this and try it." Well, then it was like a drug addiction because then I had it and I realized how good it was. And so I was always like going to those guys, like we'd dump in the mornings in the dark. And I was always like,
you're trading
Aaron Martins. I was like, "Come on, dude, man. I know you brought me some line today." And so Aaron would get in his boat and, and he would give me, it was amazing how generous all three of those men were to me then, giving me that line because it was, it was a big deal to get it. And I was using a lot of it and they were giving it to me. So the first opportunity I got to jump on with them, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah. And so really the lesson, and we kind of got about marketing and stuff right here, but the lesson that I learned from that really springboarded how I looked at doing my media. Because you control it and it's so easy. People, like I said, you got a great photo and you make a couple of quick comments and then you blast it out into cyberspace and it's gone. And it really taught me that every one of your partners and every one of my partners in our portfolio, they want something different, right? You can't just, like I said, you can't just go fishing, post your results and maybe a trophy at the end if you're fortunate to have won it, and think that's enough anymore.
Yeah.
It's not that, because everybody wants something different, right? And in the end, for the most part, these companies they make a product, they market a product because they want you and I to sell the product.
Yes.
That's how they make money in the end.
Right.
They have a marketing budget because they sold product, right? Your boat, your truck, your rods, whatever. If you're not helping sell product or representing a brand, then my question is, well, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I know
Uh,
a lot. I know a lot of my thought process goes towards, marketability, visibility. Um, the truck I drive, I'm 47 years old and I'm driving a diesel that's jacked up beyond belief with great big tires on it. You've seen it, same one I had out in California, I believe, or
right.
Vegas, whenever we were out there. That's really not what I would prefer to drive up and down the road around the country. I had an F-150 that I loved, but from a marketing standpoint, when that truck's sitting in the parking lot, when we're working on tackle and you're taking pictures around the house or whatever, that truck stands out. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I don't have to do any extra work marketing wise, but just to drive that truck helps marketing aspect, right? And that's honestly
Mhm.
the only reason I'm running. I would prefer to be in something else probably, but I don't mind the big jacked up truck. I mean, I'm an Oklahoma hillbilly. I'm fine with that, but you get the idea. Like there's other ideas that go into that. And then you were talking about, putting stuff out into space. When you kind of get into it, right, and you start enjoying it, this is something I've noticed lately. The reels, Instagram reels, Facebook reels, they're all wanting to compete with TikTok. And I think reels are extremely valuable right now on social media. And it's something, just what you touched on, it's something different than what everybody else is doing. So instead of at a tournament, taking just a picture, actually do a short little 30-second video. You know what I mean? And in that
Right.
video, it allows you to, because it's on the phone, it's just as easy as taking a picture. It allows you to talk about some of the products that you may want to talk about, right? That helped you win one of your last 4 giant trophies that you've won, you know? But then you kind of get into ideas like, how can I be different, right? And like I said, that's just something that I've come across as of late. You guys on the West Coast, you guys are always on the cutting edge of everything that's new. We're the last ones to get it here in Oklahoma, but yeah, so being different's big, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I enjoy it. I hope that's from the outside looking in, I enjoy it. And I think, like you said, at our age, you want to inspire young people more than you did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. So I try to take every interaction or every opportunity, because, for us, and I'll say it like this, it's about what legacy are you and I going to leave? Right.
Yep.
Because at some point, we're not all going to be Rick Clunn.
Yep.
Okay. At some point, Father Time is undefeated.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Father Time's undefeated. So at some point, how relevant you are will fade. And then what you have left is your legacy. So, who did you help along the way? And are those people that are going to be the next up and comers going to be like, oh yeah, I remember an interaction I had at high school with Bradley Hallman, and he's the one that inspired me, and now, I want to be the next Jordan Lee to lift this trophy at a young age.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So I think that all of us should take that, a little more seriously. Thinking not selfishly about your legacy, but just, who do you inspire next? Who's that kid that's next?
I totally agree. Totally agree. Let's change directions, because I'm sitting here thinking about what I actually, when I wanted to call you the other day and then called you last night. We haven't discussed this, and this is why I like this to be organic and real. You were one of the guys that I thought about when Bassmaster released their new open EQ, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of West Coast guys that now all of a sudden, with 9 events, having to fish all of them, which is basically there's no basically to it. It is a national tour to qualify for the Elite Series going forward, right? And how big of an investment and unrealistic that is for West Coast guy, right? Like, you guys have been begging for opens to come back for years just to get a division back out on the West Coast. That hasn't happened for multiple reasons, right? Some of it's like what you talked about. Participation is tougher out there on the West Coast. But it still was available option for guys to be able to jump into one division and fish one division and come back and forth. A guy like you who's retired recently and really going full steam ahead and had all the
Mhm.
success you've had on the West Coast. What's your feeling with the EQ? Does it completely cut you guys out?
Um, so I mean, I lately I've been not allowing people that I talk to in any arena to call either one of those two tours national tours,
Correct.
right? And I'm talking about the Elite Series, and I'm talking about Bass Pro or even Tackle Warehouse, right? Because prior to MLF owning FLW, I mean, they never came. Sometimes they would come to Texas, right? So, you know, I always say this: you can't operate your business in 2/3 of the nation and call yourself national. It doesn't work that way. So, you know, the way that I look, you know, Bass has been gone so long from here. You know, the last time Bass had opens here was the original Elite Series crop, which was 17 years ago now. I think around 17 years ish ago now. So the opens have been gone here for so long, and I'll commend FLW previously and MLF because you know they've had the Toyotas here, or Toyota Strands. You know they had that variation.
Costas, right.
Yeah, Costas, right.
They're regional stuff.
Yeah, they've had that series here I think since about 05. So they've committed to being here, and it's relatively overall it's around the same entry fee and things like that. The difference is, you know, winning you're in the opens is it's huge, right. I mean, you know, like people ask me like, well, what left do you want to do? And I mean, I would love to fish in the Bassmaster Classic, and I want to own a US Open trophy, right. And I'm not bragging. I mean, I've won some of the other trophies and checked those off my list here, but there's two things.
We got some of the same goals, brother. Maybe that's why we're buddies, right?
Yeah. There's you know, there's two things, you know, and I mean, obviously I want to be able to fish in it. But I also, when you're in it, I want to win, right? I mean, don't ever enter any competition that you don't expect to win. You know, so I do have some goals, but really, other than the federation, and that path is long and dark, and there's a lot of little small tournaments here that you have to fish through. There's no path for, you know, anybody, I guess, west of Utah, you know, all the way up to the Dakotas and all the way over, you know, like I always say, I mean, there's not including Alaska, from Texas west, there's still 13 states in the nation that don't get any attention from either tour. You know, so Bass has been gone so long, Bradley, that you know, although that's where I would choose to fish, like what you and Panger are doing, just because I like to go get five, and you know each tour does something differently, and you know I in my opinion I think if you want to catch five over a course of 4 days, the Elite Series does that the best.
Yes.
Right. And on the Bass Pro Tour side, you know, if you want to be able to catch not just numbers, they catch big ones too, but if you want to catch numbers and accumulate that, fish a different format, and you know, obviously they do that best, right? You have to decide what league is best for you as an angler, right? And we're seeing that happen, right? We're seeing people that initially went 3 years ago, right? Those contracts are ending at the end of this year, and then we're seeing some anglers now migrate back to catching five.
Yep.
You know?
It doesn't fit everyone the same, and it not, doesn't. It's a personal decision and choice, right? I mean, I'm like you. I like to try. I feel like big fish are valuable, right? I think that there's a lot of skill and things involved in catching 7-pounders, and I want that 7-pounder to count as much as possible because they don't just come every day.
Right. So anyways, to answer your question, you know, Bass has been gone so long, you know, there's really just, I look at it as, you know, they're just not coming back.
Yeah.
You know, I would love to see them find a way to potentially, you know, partner with somebody who's doing the tournaments here, and they would give at least a pathway either for us to get to the Classic or for us to get to the Elite Series. I get it. Chase, they have a business to run. They, and it has to make sense, right? You and I are not just going to start a business because we want to make some customers happy, and you and I want to lose, hundreds of thousands of dollars. You and I aren't going to do that,
right?
So on one hand, I understand it. As a fan and an angler, I think it's crappy.
Yeah.
Because there was already no path to begin with. Right.
Yeah.
At least, and when I say no path, there was at least no path at the Opens level or the Toyota level, to get there. And, and this, going to a 9 event thing, it's funny because you thought about me, I thought about you, and I thought what I told you yesterday, that you would like that,
mm-hmm.
And I always look at things objectively in the fishing industry. There's so many anglers. It's such an individualist sport. Like you control your portfolio. I control my portfolio. And then we all become individual agents of our portfolio. It's not like it's a team sport. And then that fosters us to think selfishly and not think about business. When I read the announcement about the EQ, I guess this year there was 89 or was it 93 people that fished all 9 of them.
I believe it was in the 80s. So 86, 89, somewhere in the 80s is what I know.
So when I looked at that fact that they put out, I said, well, they probably look at it as, well, we already have 100 people doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so on one side, so to answer your question, I don't like it. And my initial reaction is I don't like it because it does reduce the regionality of it, and then it reduces the ability of someone who can only commit to fishing, like say a region, to try to qualify.
Yeah.
And then I want to get into the money thing, right? I get tired of people saying, oh, it's a rich person's sport. It's why do we have 5 graphs? Why do you have this? Why do you have this? And for me, personally inside, I get tired of that. When I read that on social media, it's not, you got to have the equipment, right? I mean, a race car driver is not going to win a race if they don't have the right equipment. Right. So on one hand, I get tired of hearing that, right? Because that's just part of the evolution. But the other thing that for me, that's real is, when they go to make you fish 9 of them, what I appreciate is that it's preparing those anglers to be at that level.
I agree with that.
Okay. So I do agree with that it's giving you a taste. And so I'll advocate a second for where Bass is at. They're like, okay, look, if you can fish these 9 opens and you can afford it, you can do the travel, and you can still end up in the top 10, right? Then you are actually, preparing yourself to be an Elite Series angler.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I agree with that.
Because they don't, if the opens are high school and the EQs are college and the elites are pros, you typically don't pluck somebody out of high school to go straight to the pros.
Mm-hmm. Especially based off of 3 games.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's the thing too, so, but I'll also say this, with Bass and BBT, BPT actually does have a feeder system out here because you can work through the Toyotas, go to the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit, and then go to BBT.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there is a feeder to get to their highest level.
Yep.
For Bass to not have a feeder system to get to their highest level, basically 13 states west of Texas, I think is a failure.
I agree.
They're you don't, I look at it, okay, it's pro sports, right? Okay, so do we let the NFL teams, you can't draft anybody west of Texas? Well, how much talent are you losing?
Right.
I mean, Tom Brady's from the Bay Area. So
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I thought he was from East Coast. I don't know why I thought that.
No, yeah, he's from, I think he's from Santa Clara. He's from the Bay Area. So, so you never get to draft Tom Brady.
Yeah. The
Right.
greatest player, the greatest quarterback of all time.
And that's how I look at what Bass is doing or not doing. Right. There's no dream being sold out west for a kid, right, that wants to stay out here, right, to go to their highest level. Doesn't exist.
So I'm going to talk about this a little bit. We're a long ways into this video, and I don't know that anybody at Bass will ever see this or watch it, but I'm going to throw out my honest opinions on this deal and the reasons that are behind them. And I hope I lay this out right, because I sometimes don't explain myself well, but I was not a fan of the 9, and it's for multiple reasons. And they're not for my own personal selfish reason, like what you talked about. A lot of anglers have goals and things that they're trying to achieve on their own, and so therefore the things that fit them better is what they tend to go with and agree with. And we've both seen that at local levels, regional levels, and national levels. I'm thinking about the overall welfare of Bass as a business, Bassmaster Classics and things like that, the Elite Series. I don't think it's a good thing, and this is why. Bass, first of all, this is what I throw out there, is that we have grown high school and college fishing to such a huge proportion of participation. Castledine and I did a video the other day where we interviewed the girl that just won the national championship. She was the first girl to win a national championship. Todd sends me a text last night that he had received from someone, and apparently another young lady has won the junior world championship in the TBF side.
Right.
So, and she's like, and then they were like, hey, do you want to interview her? And so Todd was sending it to me and we were talking about it. My point being is that there is a lot of participation, interest, and involvement at the bottom end of this sport, the people coming in. And the way that MLF is set up for their Pro Bass Tour and the way that the Elite Series is set up, it's insulating these guys, a very small group of people who have been in this sport for a long time. I have complained to some of my buddies that are owners at MLF, and I have complained to a few people that have an ear at Bassmaster, that you're insulating a group of people that don't need to be insulated. We want the best of the best in competition. And I understand that setting up a career and longevity of a career and building relationships with sponsors, that the guys that are in both tours, if they were to get bumped out and down, the way that the current opens and the way that the current Tackle Warehouse Tour appears, representing those sponsors with the media coverage that's there, is not a very viable option. And having to fight your way back through 225 boats for 3 spots is not attractive. Like, it's a scary reality for
look at the journey. I commended Panger and you guys, but that's what makes it sweeter when you make it.
Yes, it does. But with the current format, they're only taking a very small percentage. So now you've got this huge group of people, which is why you see the Toyotas or the Toyotas and the Opens field sizes what they are, because you've got this huge interest in the sport, but you're not letting anybody in because you're protecting a small minority. And I think that part has got to change, because we've done this, we've grown this, we've got their interest, they're involved, they're heavily involved, and you have to give talent an opportunity. So on the MLS side, you're 100% right, which it was that way with FLW too. They have the feeder system. They have the BFLs. And with Bass, they want to talk about the Nation being their feeder system. There's no comparison. We all know what that is. The Nation has many issues politically, and a lot of things in each state's different. They're not even owned by Bass. They're privately. There's a lot of issues there. It is no way in comparison what the BFL is. For Bass to continue to grow and attract lucrative talent, the best talent there is, they have to have a different system. And by going to 9 and forcing them to fish, all of them, anyone looking at it, with the pay structure the way that it is, with the entry fee structure and the payback structure, it's not a good deal. right? But you do it for the dangling carrot at the end, which is the Elite Series and possibly a classic berth. I get that. What I had suggested before is that if Bass would just raise their field size to 125 on the Elite Series, just get it to 125 boats, that would allow them to potentially bring in 30 new anglers. And what I would say to the Elite Series guys that are like, well, that's a lot of people to be floating in and out. Well, stay in the top 95 in the points and you're on. And if you were to get kicked out and bumped out, there's 30 spots next year for you to requalify. You don't requalify the first year, there's 60 spots. If you don't requalify in 3 years, that's 90 spots. You can carry your sponsors for 2 or 3 years at that level. And at the end of 3 years, man, if you haven't filled in 90 spots, then maybe you don't belong there. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, on boat tours, there's a group of anglers that we're talking about that from a performance
Standpoint.
from an on the water performance standpoint.
Correct.
And that's kind of what Apex is trying, it will do at some point, is it'll start gleaning the bottom performers out.
Correct.
And then the higher performers, and then the new crop gets to come in.
Yeah.
So yeah, what you're saying is exactly right. And I equate, if we're going to talk about BPT and Elite Series being the pro circuits, right? It is a professional organization. So I compare it to NBA, MLB, and NFL. Okay. So if you get called up to play in the majors and you can't hack it,
you're sitting back down. Yeah, you're sitting back down.
Well, if you're lucky, like football doesn't even really do that. But
now you're playing in Canada.
In baseball, you can at least go down to the triple A's, right? And then in the NBA, they have at least the D League that you can go down to and then reprove yourself, right?
Yeah.
So my thing is it starts off as a competition. All of us that embrace the business side, we understand that we need the platform, right, to sustain our endorsements.
Correct.
Okay, because that's the only way to get paid in this game.
Yep.
Right.
That's that's the guaranteed way to support your family, right? Because you're not going to hold up trophies every year, not big trophies, unless you're like you said, unless you're a Rick Klein or a Kevin Van Dam. But you and I both know that that's a 1% of the field. There's not that many guys, and the rest of us. That's right.
It's so small, like I told Panger, like last year I won 162,000 at home. Okay. Great year. But when you take that 162 and then you average out over 10 years, right? I'm not even in the black, right? Without my endorsements, without my partnerships, sponsors, endorsers, whatever people want to call them. I in winnings, I don't even know if I'm in the black.
Yeah.
So, and that goes for every level, right? You want to sustain yourself, you have to be a representative of those companies. So yeah, I agree with you. But again, it started off, right? Ray Scott said, hey, we want to build a tour where, people have to, you have to qualify for something. You have to perform, right? And you have to there's one winner, right?
Yep.
Right now in the Elite Series, there's one winner, there's 49 losers.
Yep.
Right. And then there's another group who didn't even get a check.
That's right.
Right. So that's how it works. So I agree with you 100% that if you're not performing, you need to be sent down. And then like you said, if you can't requalify, then maybe you got to do some reflection. Like I can say I want to be a professional pitcher in the MLB all I want. I could say that all I want, and I can go to the park and throw a ball all I want, right? But in the end, if I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Right.
And part of why I head down this road, I feel like, and I thought I've thought a lot of different things, but I've had different conversations with different people, and I truly think that this EQ and this 9 really the idea primarily came from the guys that are standing on the Elite Series right now. And I'm not going to name any names because a couple of them are buddies of mine. And I didn't realize that it had gotten this cutthroat. So they're looking at, they're taking in 12 new guys this year.
What the wait, this year or
this year? This year and last year, they brought in 12. So that's what's qualifying out of the open. So with the EQ, they're going to go to 9. So that cuts that down. That's 3 more spots that they're going to be able to hold on to from the Elite Series.
Right.
This decision was really pushed from the guys that were on the Elite Series. That's who they asked. That's who they, that's who they questioned.
Yeah, it's their customers.
With, right. And it should be that's their top level. But that agenda was pushed from the top back down. And the 9 really saves them 3 spots. Now, on the Elite Series, the way that it's set up right now, dude, I didn't realize there's guys in the 60s. Okay, so there's 90 anglers there right now, 90?
Something like, yeah.
And they're only replacing 12. There are guys in the 60s, very good anglers.
Right.
Big name guys that are in the 60s in the points that are actually on the cutting block to get kicked out. So they're this close. This is how close they are. One tournament, they could be back inside the classic cut, one good tournament. So like the next event coming up, which they're going out to South Dakota. One good tournament, they could be potentially inside the classic cut. A bad tournament, bad 2 days, 2 days of fishing, a bad 2 days of fishing. They're on the cutting block and they're back to the opens trying to compete for 3 spots and 225 boats. So that's where some of this is getting from. The reason that it's in the 60s is because of all the exemptions that they have. Now, you
mean classic, like the Legends exemptions and the AOI?
Yeah, and the way that I understand it, the Legends and the AOYs and all these exemptions that they've made to protect people, I don't think that those count against. So like, I think they can go up and they won't count against the number. Does that make sense? So like, if it's Rick Clun,
yeah, they'll raise the field.
They'll raise the field size for someone like Clun for him to use one of his exemptions. The exemptions that are getting them is the exemptions that they put in for the guys to give them 2 years. So if a rookie comes on tour, they're giving him 2 years. And so it's those guys that are, a lot of them underperforming, and they're taking spots. So they may be in 80th or 89th in the points, but they're not going to get kicked out until their 2 years is up. With what I'm talking about, where you raise the field, man, you can get rid of all these goofy exemptions. You can make this truly, what your results are is what's going to carry you or not carry you and kick you back. And the alternative of getting kicked out is not as big a deal because there's so many spots to get back in if that's the case. So I've gone blank, but a friend of mine, he won. I think he's actually the one that won the Chrome topwater. Why have I gone blank? Justin Atkins. Was Justin not the one throwing the Chrome?
It might have been. It might have been. Yeah.
So phenomenal angler, right? Forest Wood Cup champion. I've known him a long time. And the reason I'm using him for an example here is because he won't get mad at me. He'll understand. He's at a point in his life where he just gotten married, had the first child, all these things going on in his life. And he had just qualified for the Elite Series. He is borderline not fishing well right now, probably because of things he's got in his life, because he's definitely not fishing at what he's capable of, the level. Being knocked out for someone like him with 30 spots left, and I've been there. I've been there. 2011. I know what it's like, where you're just like not fishing well, mad at the world, got the wrong outlook, and things aren't going well. Something like that might light a fire under Justin, where there's no doubt he's coming back the next year and he's going to qualify. It could actually help him. It gives character to his career. And he could go on to win the Bassmaster Classic from something like that. I mean, that guy's capable of recovering like that. I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing, but there's got to be enough places for those guys to be able to come back in and play. The other thing, the reason that I say that this format would work better is because there's a huge issue with what I talked about at the beginning. The feeder system at Bass does not exist. But I think that it's pretty generally thought of that their top level, the Elite Series, is the best option. It's the best to market at. It's where, you get the most eyeballs. That is a better carrot. And if an angler at a regional level gets to choose between the two, then it allows you to steal. So you're not grooming them when they're young, but it allows you to take over. So let's say that a guy fishes the Toyotas and he fishes the Opens and he qualifies for both. And he's going to qualify for the Pro not the Pro Bass Tour. I always get these mixed up.
The Tackle Warehouse.
Warehouse Pro. Yeah.
Yeah.
That or the Elite Series, and he's going to qualify in both. He's probably going to choose the Elite Series. You see what I'm saying? And you've allowed this angler to come up, whether he's fishing BFLs or whatever, and he's come up through both systems. Then it kind of allows you to pluck from their talent pool, from their feeder system that you don't have. And I think overall for the health of bass, that's a much better option than cutting that supply line off, because that's what's going to happen. It's going to cut that supply line off where you're not getting, and they benefited from that, years ago, whenever they were plucking from FLW, right? I mean, Ayler, the list is long. Jason Christie's, all those guys came over, but actually grew up through the other system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I mean, like Height and Ayler.
The list is long. List is long.
They came from that side. So, the other thing to talk about exactly what you're saying is the issue with why I believe that some of the organizations buy off on that, and it's what Apex is dealing with right now, right? Because it's growing, it's growing slowly as opposed to landing with a big splash, right?
Mm-hmm.
In professional bass fishing, the anglers have not yet basically seized their destiny. And what I mean by that is, and when I compare pro sports, the other pro sports, the teams pay us to play, right? And in this sport, we currently still have to pay to play.
Yep.
And when you look at bass and you look at the current, using your example, the current Elite Series anglers, for you to sustain your career, we already talked about this. You need the platform to sustain your career, right? Mm-hmm. But bass also needs the names.
Yep.
Okay. And obviously when we talk about some of the biggest, I'm going to use some of the younger big names that are coming up instead of using Skeet and Kevin all the time. You look at guys like Justin Lucas, Jacob Wheeler, these younger anglers that are going to be that next crop that carry them the next 10 years, let's say.
I think they're already there.
I absolutely, but the guys like Kevin and Skeet and those guys, you still got to pry that title out of their hands, right? Out of their cold dead hands. But my point is that it takes time to develop. Like Justin, I've known Justin since he was 16, fishing future pro tournaments out here in the West. Mm-hmm. He's probably younger than that, but he was like, first time I met him, he was 16 years old. And then he fished co-angler, and then he went fished front of the Toyotas, and he went to the tour. He's the poster child for how to ascend to the highest level and then achieve the highest awards in the level in the sport, right? But my point is that it takes time to develop an angler like that to take over that mantle.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Right. Yep. So the league also wants to retain those anglers, right? Because it takes time to develop that talent. Right. So they fall into that trap also, and I think the easy thing, to somewhat disagree with what you're saying, the easy thing is to raise the number of anglers that you allow to fish. In theory, that's the easiest way. You just let more people. Right.
But I'm only talking about 125. I'm not talking about 200 boat fields or anything like that.
Right. Okay. So you're talking about allowing 40 more anglers in.
I think that they're scheduled to fish 100 going into, I think their number is going to be right at 100.
Next year?
Yeah, next year or maybe in 24, but that's where their number is set right now. That's what I've seen. They're looking at 100. And I know in 06, the first year of the Elite Series, and I fished it for 6 years, 06 through 11, we always had between that 110 to 115 mark.
Yeah, there were even more than that.
Yeah.
In a few years. Yeah, there were more. I think 100 boat field is probably about right. But again, if you talk about professional sports, currently there's 172 at the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And even in the PGA, right? I think the PGA, they allow 100, right? That's who gets their PGA card. There's 100 golfers to get to fish at the highest or get to golf at the highest level.
Yep.
So that's even a small sample size of who gets to participate.
It is
smaller than
it is
yeah, smaller.
With this system I'm talking about, with qualifying up to 30 guys. I mean, think about what the opens are going to look like too at that point. I mean, it's really going to change the outlook because, and I'm still talking about qualifying out of each division. Even if you throw in a California division, there's enough numbers there for that to happen. You're talking about attracting a lot of guys that are fishing pro circuit stuff, Toyota guys, a lot of guys that came out of the Elite Series that were previous Elite Series anglers back into the opens. I mean, you're going to have a lot of star power just inside those opens alone. So that in itself is going to elevate that tour.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong. If they have double qualifiers, okay, so if you're a currently Elite Series pro, right? If you're Jason Christie and you're fishing the opens and you double qualify, that his double qualified spot will go back to an Elite Series angler, not to an open angler.
Correct. Under the current situation, I believe that is
right.
Correct.
So in theory, it could be 8 people.
It could be, in theory, if you had that many guys fishing down, you could.
Right.
Yep. And I don't have a problem with that, but that would help insulate the system for sure if that was the case.
And that goes back to what you were saying, right? It does keep those anglers there, and it can't be. Well, and for me, I don't think it can't be a club like that.
Say that again.
Can't be a club. You can't be, it can't be where so few anglers, and then the ones that are there that are not performing, that they get to stay there just because they're currently in the club.
Well, let me go back on what I said. So like right now, as an example, Kenta Kiramara, I think I pronounced Kenta's name right. Let's just stay with Kenta. He's a buddy of mine too. I don't want to kill me for mispronouncing his Japanese last name. Kenta is in the top 3 or 4 or 5 in the points in the overall. And I'm sure in some divisions he probably is as well. Right now, it's not my understanding. Let's say Kenta finishes in the top 3 in the overall. They're taking 12 out of the opens no matter what. So I don't think, this year. So I don't think Kenta's spot, I think it would work down to 4th or 5th or wherever that needs to be that they take out of the overall in the opens to fill those 12 spots out of the opens. So it would not insulate the Elite Series. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I think that's how it works.
Yeah, so I just pulled it up, and there's 94 on the AOI list.
Okay, so I'm wrong about the number, right?
Or Elite Series, but it looks like there may have been a withdrawal. So but yeah, there's 94 there. So they're not changing. I mean, they already put it out, but I guess what's the hurt? They do this year, it doesn't work. They could always come back. They could always came back and said, okay, what we're going to do for the regional people is if you're top 10 in the regionals, that would be 3 regionals, right? 30 people. We're going to have a fish off, right? So it still leaves that. It still leaves that that path.
Yeah.
Right. And you 30 are going to have a fish off, and whoever wins that fish off, that one spot, now instead of 9, we'll give you 10.
Yeah.
Right. And then they might do that next year. It's not. Well, I don't think it's.
Like I said, I think the main purpose of the 9 was honestly to get from 12 to 9. You cut 3 spots out, and it's because, and dude, I don't think this is right. I don't think a guy should be this far into the season on the Elite Series and be faced with the fact of, if I have a good tournament here, I'm going to be inside the classic cut. But if I have a bad tournament here, I'm all the way out. There has to be some gap between that. A guy shouldn't be borderline on a classic cut and still be borderline on getting kicked out. There's a problem with that. You shouldn't be on the chopping block.
Now, do they take an average of like 2 seasons or 3 seasons?
Yeah, there's a lot of complications to all that. And that's what I'm saying is some of that's just, I understand why all things were done years ago, and I understand what they're trying to accomplish, but I think that just the fact of some of the numbers of the overall field size could fix a lot of that, and make this thing much simpler and be more attractive to bring in young talent from even the West Coast, where guys could get in and play, and where you attract the best of the best. Because at the end of the day, that's what you want at the Bassmaster Classic, is the best of the best. And I'll be honest with you, I don't care if their name is Skeet Reese, Gerald Swindle or not. If it's a new young angler that no one's heard of, then, and he catches them, then he is our superstar. Because the Jacob Wheelers and the Justin Lucases have proven that they don't need a lot of insulation to stay on tours. They can do that just fine by themselves. So let the competition truly begin, and let's really get down to who are some of the best anglers. And by forcing them to fish all 9 is tough, because those guys, even at a regional level, fishing Toyotas and stuff, are going to have a lot of scheduling problems. And so they're going to have to decide, do I want to chase this carrot? The money's not really right over here. The money's better over here, as far as, you know, cashing checks and trying to stay break even, like we've talked about. I think that it allows them to do that. Another big complaint that I've heard, and I don't want to get way off into this, but you talked about guys talking about it's a rich man sport. And I totally agree with your point, because I've been doing this my whole life. And every time I see that, I start thinking about all my buddies that are in this sport, everybody that I know, and everybody's plumbers, electricians, firemen, law enforcement like yourself. These are not wealthy people, right? And that's truly who's involved in our sport. But there's a lot of truth in the fact that the general public seems to think that if you fish 3 opens and you qualify for the Elite Series, that all of a sudden money and sponsorship money is going to fall out of the sky and rain, and these guys are going to be able to fish and make 100. And that's not how it works.
It don't happen that way. It does not happen that way.
No.
You know, if you're not already involved and you're not already doing the things, you know, if you don't have some type of boat deal or engine deal or graph deal or something, fishing at what I would call the regional level, right? That does not magically happen. You know, you qualifying for the Elite Series and using their media packet, you know, and you handing that out to potential endorsers, that doesn't get it done. You have no track history, right? I mean, you know, you're going to use their media packet, and you might get on stage and you can't even get 4 words out of your mouth, right? Or you're not dressed right, or your conduct is poor. You know, they're not going to back you for that.
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah, and you have to be doing that ahead of time.
Yeah, and it's just like fishing. It is. It's just like fishing. I bet you will agree with me on this. I was not. In 2006, I was a rookie on the Elite Series, and I was nowhere near the marketability that I am today. I couldn't speak as well. I couldn't talk. And you would think, I mean, I was 28 or 29 years old. You would think that's a grown man should be able to. And not a lot of people can at that age, but I didn't come by it naturally. Cameras felt awkward. Microphones felt awkward. I just wanted to fish, right? You just want to hunker down. I'm going to catch my 5 and beat everybody, and I'm going to be the next Van Dam. That's what a lot of young guys think.
Right.
It takes time, and you have to groom your marketability the same way that you groom your fishing. It takes time.
100%. I tell young kids now, or anybody that listens here, right? And they want to go back there. And I tell them exactly that all the time. You know, if you spend 7 days a week and you want fishing to be your career and how you put food on the table, right? I tell them, like, out of those 7 days, minimally 2 to 2.5 days you have to spend on the business side. You know, and I know we're, you know, dropping it, you know, Ish fishes Apex, and Ish and I have always been friends, but he and I are becoming really a lot closer, right? And I love talking to him because he's such a savage at business.
Yeah.
Right. That's how that's his life.
Yeah.
Right. If he's not saltwater fishing or he's not bass fishing, he's working on fishing business.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it shows.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you don't have, and I'm talking to anybody that's listening, if you don't have that work ethic, you know, if you believe, now fishing has to start off has to be fun. Take that out of it. Has to be fun. And then you also have to be somewhat good at it.
You have to be obsessed with it, you know, obsessed.
Yeah. Yeah, and but what I'm talking about is results wise, you have to be somewhat good at it, right?
Yes.
Because you can't, if you're not having fun and you're no good at it, you need to pick something else to do.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So taking those for granted, if you really want to do that, you have to, like you said, you have to be obsessed with it, but you have to work just as hard, maybe for some people even harder,
Mm-hmm.
off the water
Mm-hmm.
as you have to do on the water.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's what, in the end, again, companies make products not to give away, but to sell.
Yep.
And those companies want to be profitable.
Yep. They
right?
have to be profitable.
They
have
have
to be. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So if you embrace that partnership, like you were talking about, you embrace that partnership and you're helping facilitate that back and forth, then you're valuable to them.
Mm-hmm. And it starts just like what you talked about a while ago. You were talking about, in the beginning, it's discounted product, and you have to treat that as serious as you would anything else that you work with. And it takes time and energy. And that's also how you groom yourself. That's where you learn. That's where you learn to speak, talk, how to handle things. And then you start to build relationships that become valuable later on in life as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Obviously I'm preaching to the choir. You've been doing this, and and I appreciate. I've said this to you earlier, and I said to Panger, I appreciate you documenting your journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it hasn't been an easy one.
No.
And and I use you as an example all the time when I talk to young guys. I use you by name. I go, look, this guy has won this, and this. He's been there.
Mm-hmm.
I go, look how hard it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That is not an easy journey. And like you said, it's you have one bad day and you could be out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Boat breakdowns. There's lots of things that happen. We compete on public waterways, and there's a lot of variables that we don't have controls over, and they have a huge impact on your entire year, and and then on your career as well. Dude, we've gone long enough. I really appreciate it, Ken. You've got Instagrams. Where can everybody find you at?
Yeah, Ken Mall at Ken Mall Promotions on Instagram and IG. So yeah, hit me up there, give me a follow. I love the industry, and as long as I'm relevant, I want to participate in it and I want to be part of it, because, like I said, Father Time's undefeated, and one day I'll be, at least from a fishing industry standpoint, I won't be as relevant as I am today. So I want to enjoy the ride.
Yeah, you're doing a good job at it, dude. And you're like me. I'm at a point in my life that's just where I want to be and who I want to be involved with. Very, very fortunate to have met you and call you a friend, dude. I really appreciate that, man.
Yeah, much love, man.
All right, guys. Don't forget, bump that like, hit that subscribe, leave all your questions, comments below. I'm sure Ken's pretty good at if you have some questions for him, he's probably pretty good at finding this video on YouTube and answering some of your guys' comments. So, guys, until next time, we are out of here. See ya.